6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Rob, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the show for movie lovers who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Now, for those of you new to the live show, and even some of our more experienced hands, we've been tweaking our agenda just to help guide our conversation a little better. That said, I want you to know that any chat is welcome. If you're trying to reach one of the hosts, though, be sure to the little at symbol, at me or Jim. And for those who are having their own side adventures in the chat a la community, fill your boots. All I ask is if you at each other, just so I don't get confused as I'm scrolling, trying to catch up with the chat, because I'm easily confused. And keep it to a dull roar so that Jim and I don't lose someone who is trying to chat with us about what we're talking about. So with that out of the way, tonight, let me get my nonsense together here. There we go. Tonight we are going to be looking at Journey to Greenland. Where is my log line? I had a whole shtick for this. Okay, we're going to be looking at Journey to Greenland. Thomas and Thomas, or I suppose it is French, Thomas et Thomas, are going through a rough patch. They're both 30-something part-time actors living in Paris. So they randomly decide to leave the city and fly away to Kullorsuaq. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. One of the most remote villages in Greenland where Thomas's father, Nathan, lives. Among the Inuit community, they will discover the charms of local customs and their friendship will be challenged. People will grow. So with that out of the way, I could say, does it pass the Bechdel test? No. Would it earn a reframe stamp? No. Is it class conscious? Maybe. Something for us to discuss, when we're talking about the theme, the meaning. Is there any class analysis to speak of? Again, that's a maybe. Maybe not in a strict Marxist sense, but there's something going on here that's a little more than your average flick. Now, with that out of the way, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna welcome my good. Listen, I'm looking for my my cinema travel partner, Mr. Jim Chboyko, but he's having some technical difficulties right now. So what I am going to do, we do have a special treat, a special co-host for you. Let's all now welcome, and dare I say, travel guide. Let's all welcome Ms. Katie Ann Fowler. Hello, Katie.
Hello, good to see you.
How are you?
Thanks
doing?
for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Here, let's give you the right cheer.
Oh, thanks.
So Katie, how you doing this week? How you doing this week we're still in the COVID times, but
yeah.
The weather here in wonderful winter Winnipeg wasn't bad the last few days, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also taken part in some virtual traveling recently. Richard and I traveled to Italy on Friday.
Very cool.
Yeah, we did a cooking class with an Italian grandmother, a nonna.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we made lasagna from scratch. So even though we haven't left the borders of Manitoba since, I guess, February 2020, we got to travel in some small way to just outside of Rome to make some fabulous pasta and with some great people, some fellow Canadians and some Americans there too. So it was great.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's awesome. And you're going to have to tell us a bit more when we get into talking about the show, why you chose it and everything. But I do see that that my cinema travel partner has worked out his technical issues. So why
good.
don't we all give a big round of applause for Mr. Jim? Wait for it, Mr. Jim Chmoyko.
I love computers so much.
Well, you know what? Maybe move that computer firmly into the 21st century, Jim.
No, something had happened and it reset everything. So I have to. Anyway.
Well, you know what? It's good to see you. You made it. That's what's important. Good to see you here, Jim. It looks like you're doing as best as you can within Manitoba. Well, really, the city of Winnipeg's borders. You managed to get out for a bit, didn't you, this weekend?
Yeah, I did. Made it out of the city, ostensibly looking for various kinds of owls and failing on every occasion. And then getting to tune into the Manitoba Birds and Wildlife Photography Facebook page and seeing a great gray owl perched on the Birds Hill Park road sign. So,
wow.
As if to taunt me.
As though it was out to get you.
I firmly believe it is. So owls are jerks.
All right, listen, looks like we've got some folks already in the chat. Why don't we give them a proper welcome? First of all, we have our friend in another part of the country, I suspect a slightly warmer part, Mr. Vlad 65. Hello, sir.
Yay.
Awesome. Okay. And, of course, you may know this man, Katie, and we all know him, another supporter of the show, and the other half of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars, Richard L. Oh. And then even and Vlad, in responding to him, managed to mention that he did watch the movie this week, which is good, especially when we enter the spoiler zone. All right. Our man in Kuwait City, the man, the myth, the legend, Jelly Duck 100, Ahmed. Good to see Ahmed. All right. Looks like we've got a great. We've got some folks active in the chat. We've got a great movie. I think now is the time, though, before we get to first thoughts and into the agenda. What time would that be? I know you're wondering. It's the time to shamelessly beg for the like. What would be the next, Katie?
Subscribe.
That's correct. Now that's a great co-host. Getting into the wave, understanding what we shamelessly beg for, and then last but certainly not least, don't forget to ring, Jim, that bell. That's right, everybody. All right. Well, with that out of the way, let's you know what? Let's get some beats on, but not too on. Alrighty, why don't we jump into first thoughts? And you know what? Why don't we, if it's cool with you, Jim, why don't we start with Katie? She can kind of not just maybe give an idea of where we're coming from, because this really started with a conversation with Katie about we can't travel, but travel films. She's got a professional travel and tourism background. Yeah. And so maybe she can talk about why she chose this film. Like she's not here. Maybe, Katie, why don't you... Yeah. She's right there. Okay, Katie, you know what? We're going to throw the focus on you for now. And first of all, tell us why you chose this film. And where you're coming from when you chose it, and then give us your first thoughts. Go.
Okay.
And maybe I'll get that bell out of the way for you.
Okay.
Tell us.
Yeah. I'm actually not 100% sure what made me originally what made me originally choose this film, but it was actually saved on our movie save or movie watch list on Netflix for a long time.
You and your husband?
Yes, yeah. And so I guess it was maybe last month sometime. We were, you know, it's evening, not much to do nowadays, and we're just same old movie night sort of thing. And we decided, hey, why don't we watch that movie? It was basically the right amount of time, I think, to watch it, so that we wouldn't be up too late or anything like that. So yeah, that's it had been on our watch list for a while, and so we decided to jump into it. And actually, interestingly, we didn't know that the movie was in French. We didn't know it was a French film, so we thought, oh, this is interesting. So yeah, and then we just went ahead and watched it. And I guess to move next to my first takes of the film. I think I remember as the movie was playing, or as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, you know, how different of a format this is from a lot of other kind of mainstream Hollywood films, as far as like the style of film that it is. It's definitely not something you see, you know, typical Hollywood movies or anything like that. As far as, I guess in French they call it a cool comedy, as the type of film that they would consider it being. So I see you nodding in agreement.
Yeah,
Rob,
no,
with that
I was gonna call it a slow burn.
It was a slow burn.
I
Yeah.
like that cool comedy. There's some
Yeah.
laughs, but okay, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's for everybody. Like, I think some people like things to move a little bit more quickly, or they like to see
You
more.
can save that to when you say if it's worth your time or
Oh,
not.
okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Just talk about what, like, your first reactions. You know, like.
Yeah, that was definitely one of them. But I guess one of my first reactions. So in relation to that, as far as it being a slow burn, one of my first reactions was, you know, just based on my experience in tourism and travel, is that the way that the trip was playing out for them, the two Tomases, is, I would say, pretty typical of how a trip would play out when you're visiting. They call it in the industry, they call it a VFR, so visiting a friend or a relative. It would play out pretty much, like, just taking the Greenland aspect out of it for a second. But that's, I think, how it would play
You're
out.
going to Ely, Manitoba.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
you're not checking off attractions off your bucket list or anything like that. So I admired that they made the movie that way, because I think that's generally how a visit would go if you're visiting your father in a different place. Is that it's not going to be, you know, full of spectacle or anything like that. There's going to be some mundane moments and everything, and that's probably what made it have that slow burn feel. So yeah.
Well, makes sense to me. Listen, before I move over to you, Jim, on your first thoughts, I did want to say we got somebody new watching us, Blake Decoding from, and he's on Twitch, because we also broadcast to Twitch simulcast. So Blake, welcome.
Hi, Blake.
All right, Jim. Yeah, what were your first thoughts?
That's the kind of personalized service that you get when you come to Jim and Rob et al. Analyze movies. Yeah, first thoughts. Well, I'll get the one thing out of the way. When you introduce the concept of a narwhal in the first few minutes, you better come up with a narwhal. But other than that, I was quite. It's the fireworks factory all over again. Mind you,
Where's that horn?
If they did have a narwhal in the movie, they probably would have had to have killed it. So that sort of is a blessing in disguise. But yeah, it was. I sort of thought while I was watching this, Alexa, please show me the opposite of a Zack Snyder movie, and that's exactly what we sort of got, a gentle little rumination on, being a dude in the 21st century. It was kind of, at the same time, I'm not super familiar with the Bob Hope, Bing Crosby movies.
The old road movies.
Yeah, this
On
was
the road.
like a super low key, without the obvious kind of, like, one guy was a bit of a player, and the other guy had some other, they each had something to do, and the taller Thomas was sort of that guy at the party, looking for love. And you can argue that the Miss Greenland character was a bit of the, to use a road movie cliche, the princess, right? And so there's the only thing that they didn't really have was a villain, but it was a really neat. I thought it was especially this week, and I don't think Katie could have timed this better, or we could have slotted it in better after the crazy week in Washington, to have something nice. Well, I hate using the word nice, but having something kind of gentle and life affirming and interesting and
remote.
Remote and not American or not Canadian. Like, this was, a French movie about Greenland. It almost at times, is it a movie or a painting in the best sense of the word? Also, I looked online afterwards, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's like a documentary." I didn't get that. There's too many fictional qualities for it to be a documentary, but also it's a movie that I think is the sort of the undercurrent of it. It's about place. And I didn't quite get what they were going for, but they're using Google Dansk to file their French unemployment benefits, and everyone's got shirts. Like, little Thomas has a Tokyo shirt that he goes to bed with, and Big Thomas has got the Montreal Canadiens hat, and he's got a Cape of Good Hope. Like, he brings multiple hats. And so I think it had a commentary, and I'd be eager to talk with this about you guys, on citizenship, or, being a global citizen in the 21st century as well. And it had a nice approach.
Well,
not
then
too
let's
pat, and not too, it wasn't any, it's kind of fish out of watery, but it didn't have any cross-culture conflict or anything like that too. So, but yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a perfect movie for this week, especially.
Okay. So, you'd say worth your time.
Absolutely.
So we won't need to talk to you about that.
No.
All right. Okay. You know what? I would agree with both of you. And I kind of like, Katie, that you brought up that what the French call this kind of comedy. Because I was like, it's that's the genre it puts itself in, is comedy. And I'm like, I can't call it a drama. And even the slow burns felt wrong when I was trying to describe the film, but at the same time, maybe a better would be low arc. And so a cool comedy, I really like that. I did, I don't know if you guys had this problem, but part of me was like, kind of, okay, so what's it about? Like, what's the narrative drive? And it was funny. All the things that I kind of wrote down that I would expect from this, especially the things I was very worried about. I was worried it's like, okay, Westerners go to an indigenous village. Oh, it's going to be the noble, like Noble Savage, and there'll be a shaman, and they really managed to thread that needle well, where there was some real, like, some education without any kind of white savior or any of that. Like, not even if there was some cultural misunderstandings, and there were, or mostly language misunderstandings, they didn't make it zany. It was the opposite of, like, it was funny, like on a human scale, but it wasn't, it didn't set up more zany adventures on more misunderstandings.
Not
and even the way the tall Thomas, is like, hey baby, the way they handled that, and even the way at the end she's like, I'm in love with another boy. It's like, just, yes, like every time they went there, it felt real.
Yeah.
Even down to his, it's almost his a little bit of I think she likes me, that it's like, or she likes that boy. You know, like it was really just well handled. I really did. I can't say I loved it, but I enjoyed it. I would say it's worth your time for a number of reasons. One of which is, if you just want a palate cleanser kind of comedy that isn't obvious, that kind of shows a part of the world that, especially if you're Canadian, you will recognize a lot of stuff. Yeah. And we'll get more into that, into the look and the sound of the film. But it really, like, it's parts that I recognize that's sung to me. Well, at the same time, it's like, that's different, but not in a exotic way, you know. Katie, to finish us off, worth somebody's time, and I think you were saying earlier about whose time it might be worth.
Yes, I think it's worth your time. I was before I get to that, I was just gonna comment on Tomas, the taller one who was interested in the woman. The Inuit Woman. I joked with Richard after, and I said, where did he expect that to go? Like,
yes, ding, ding, ding. Where's that bell, Richard?
Like, he didn't.
Jim, I want to ring the
bell. He didn't, and I didn't get the impression that it was like, I want to bring this topic into the fold. I didn't get the impression that he wanted to just be with her that way, in that one way, but like he actually was like, it seemed like almost puppy love in a way.
Or was it? Well, okay, you know what? We'll get into that. But
I just wanted to comment on that.
No, it was great. And then,
like, what was that
about? Well, okay, so I think now what we're doing, folks, is let's, and I'll even, let me bring it up. So we've kind of got our first thoughts out of the way. We are entering what we would call, if I can find the cue card, yes, we are now officially entering the spoiler zone. If you haven't seen this movie, and you're desperate to, we're going to talk a lot about stuff that you're going to see and go, oh, I knew that because I was listening to these three ding-dongs. Yeah. And you're one of us now, Katie, a fellow ding dong.
Wonderful.
and the first woman on the show.
I know. Yes. I'm making history here.
Somebody's making history. We will not pass the Bechdel test.
No.
But we're at least halfway there now.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being a big supporter of the show. We're looking forward to having that angle. Well, at the same time, like, you know, you picked a great movie. It's just going to be great to get your viewpoint in all respects.
Yeah,
all right,
for sure.
So we're in the spoiler zone. What do we want to talk about first? We could talk about the story. We could get into some of the meaning, some of the politics. Do we want to talk about the look of it? Want to talk about the sound?
Well, let's go for the story aspect of it, I guess.
All right. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Elemental.
So let's now, partly I'm looking for the little cues that I've got, because this is these for those of you who don't know, I'm going to use that so I can make chapter markers. So as I scroll through it, I'm like, oh, story. All right. Well, why don't you start us off, Jim?
Sure. I thought I looked at some reviews online afterwards, just to sort of get a sense of what people were thinking, and one person said, "Two guys go on a trip, nothing happens, don't bother." And I thought, it's not really this is more of it's almost like a novel. It has a feeling of a sort of a very quiet novel. I think a lot happens. There's a lot going on with family history. The way, for those who haven't watched, the smaller Thomas or shorter Thomas or whatever is going back to Greenland, where his dad has set up shop for the last 20 years. And there's some
Nathan.
Yes, Nathan. There's some distance between them, and nothing too major. They seem sort of. I mean, they talk on Skype or Zoom or what have you, but a lot of it is you know, a main part of it is the inability for people to speak about the most obvious things. Like, he suspected his father moved out there for a woman, didn't really know about it, sort of confirmed it. I guess that photo was confirmation. And he says, and the two Thomases have a conversation. They say, you should probably ask him about it. He says, yeah, we don't do that in this family. And there was also the aspect of the father's health. I think Vlad mentions it on the message board, and I thought so too. It's sort of setting up that this is the last time they're going to see each other in a very subtle way. And that's another nice thing about this movie, the subtlety that you don't always get with films from other countries. So that's one aspect. Again, I mentioned the aspect about place. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on that, because it seemed to be saying something about being a global citizen. And you're just sort of like, every place is the same and yet it's different, or something to that effect. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So there's a couple things going on there.
Well, what about you, Katie? Did the story work for you? Were you as you're watching it, did everything kind of logically flow? Did it make sense, or was there any part where you're like, kind of, wait, what now? I think Vlad actually kind of, he's sort of speaking to something you had mentioned about where is he going to go with this, and how that part of the story might have been forced. I don't agree, but I'm wondering what your take is on that story element and on what Vlad was saying, specifically about Tall Thomas, going, hey, baby.
Yeah. So definitely that part was, as the movie was rolling along, it was something that I kind of turned to Richard and said, where did he expect that to go? But maybe in a way, like maybe that would happen in that situation where you're infatuated by somebody, and you're not really thinking long term, and you just try and you try to learn the language, and you have some faint hope that something will come of it somehow, but that it's not possible. So,
well, I'm wondering if it's like, I could totally see any man or woman in you're on vacation. You're still disconnected from anything that would normally inhibit you. So all of a sudden, everything's an opportunity, right? What I like is that they flipped it around in the most human and real way than a standard movie would. And I suspect even like typical genre French stuff can be pretty, hey, the guy gets the girl. That's not it's not exclusive to North America. But I'm wondering if they kind of drew it on purpose that way. Here's a guy who's gonna make his move, and of course she, who's still in her place, is like, another guy, but hey, thanks.
And maybe
you seem nice enough.
And maybe too, that particular, both Tomases are young attractive men, but I got the impression the taller one was probably like, I don't know,
a dog?
More of a heartthrob, I guess. Had more of a heartthrob role in a way, and maybe he's been successful back
if they
home.
could both bathe. Maybe his shave, something.
The flashback scene in improv class was shocking, because they look, one had the two-tone hair and the other was clean shaven. It's like,
yeah. So so maybe he's had success picking up girls back in Paris, and just
he's chatting up the two women in the class there.
Yeah.
Both
so he's
sort
just
of hanging off all his.
Go ahead. So maybe that's just part of his personality, and it doesn't stop when he travels, right? So, but
let's bring up the fact that he's both French and an actor. And if you've known anybody,
And he's tall and good looking.
yeah, so that sort of exponentially ramps up your.
He's checking the boxes, as Rob would say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, listen, I'm going to ask Vlad to put a pin in this. You mentioned something about loss being a theme. Vlad, when we get to the meaning part, I want you to put a pin in this. And if I forget, please bring up that chat. Like, put it in, say, hey, don't forget about my thing. Okay. Do you guys, so as far as the basic story structure, I mean, it still had still kind of a 3-act thing. It gets a little depressing at the midpoint. Like, I mean, it's just shy of the midpoint. We learn that Nathan is sick, like in the interaction. And that was one of the things I loved about the way they gave us information, but kept it from other characters. 'Cause there's 2, even 3 languages going on here. You got, Inuit, you've got French, and you probably got some smattering of Danish kind of mushed in there somewhere. Yeah. But the way they were able to have those conversations and those moments in front of, and what did he, because there was a lot of that. What did he say? And I thought they really used that well to give us information, but keep them from the characters, or keep the characters kind of guessing. So yeah, I think this story really worked out well. You know what? Why don't we, there's so much going on. Why don't we jump to the meaning? Talk about some of these themes.
Yeah.
That work for you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, you know what, Jim, I'll give it over to you for now, and while I hunt for my little meaning tag. I will get better at this. What was the main theme? Vlad mentioned. See, I remembered Vlad. Vlad mentioned, the theme of loss in the film, which is definitely there. What do you think is the core meaning? What's the core message of this film to you?
I think another one that we hadn't mentioned yet is belonging. The nice thing about this is at no time were these guys shown as being superior because they were from Paris. It wasn't a big city boy going out to the country. I think we sort of touched upon that earlier. But sort of where you belong in the world. It was actually not really. Well, there was a question sort of about midway through the movie. What are these guys running from? That's not how it was put, but it was like, why are they here? And I don't think their careers as working actors was working spectacularly well. One guy had a role in a sitcom, and he didn't work the car properly, and that kind of thing. And there's also something about
you left it in gear.
The smaller Thomas's relationship with, I guess, Lise was her name, and that was on the rocks. He was saying it was complicated. He sent a little sad message to her at some point
where he's lying.
Yeah.
His iPhone did not die in the
sad.
cold weather, which is sort of, I'll let it go, but I don't think -20 it would exist too long outside. Maybe it was a newer one, but anyway. So I think there's a couple things. There's a loss, belonging, how did the father find himself? It sounded like it was fairly capricious how he ended up in Greenland, and the guys were. I mean, they identified as Parisians, but they seemed to be. I was actually wondering at the end if one of or both of them would stay. But so I think that's.
And I love they didn't do that, because that's another one that I wrote down, like a classic of this going to a far off place genre. Mm-hmm. I think the taller Thomas was actually from Marseille, because he was talking about his accent as their relationship was going on the rocks. Vlad also mentions, and back to that theme of loss, the 2 young boys at the church, to remember that kid who committed suicide. And yes, of course, the key one, Thomas is going to lose his father. What else do you think was, Katie? What else do you think was going on in this film as far as theme goes, as far as its message?
Yeah, I certainly agree with the loss theme. I think what I also see from it though is, you know, with loss of something, there can be you can gain something else from that, and I think a place like a setting like Greenland, because it's you know as far as it's a pretty has a low population of people, so it's a pretty sparsely populated community, and so in some ways it can almost in some ways resemble new beginnings, like trying new things, like the hunting and everything else. So there, it's kind of like it may be like a transition phase for the two Tomases, whereas as far as maybe loss in their loss in relationships back home, and loss in maybe their careers and everything back home, but by going to a place that's remote and desolate and isolated like Greenland, and maybe it resembles new beginnings because it's not extraordinarily developed like Paris or that part of the world is, so that it may resemble new beginnings in that way. So it's bittersweet in that way, I think. So
Do you think maybe also, like, one of the great things about going to somewhere remote like that in like a winter, where everything's clean white, they're being kind of as characters, they're being stripped of some of their BS. That both of them in some way face their BS to a degree. I think, and there's that kind of, they do go through a bit of a crucible. Even if it's, let's say with little Thomas, kind of just accepting, it's like, yeah, we don't talk about that. Not going to talk about it. And he's able to walk away without a sense of, oh, I failed as a human being. We love these big catharsis moments, but this seems to be a little more kind of, sometimes it's just, that's not who you are. And that they get to be a bit more accepting of themselves and therefore others, stripped of some of their BS. Even the tall one, I agree with you guys. Like he's probably quite successful in his romantic adventures. But even he had the bizarre, a kind of a ridiculous dream of the third eye, and he's going to stay there with his family. I loved that. Like, it was just so hilarious. Nuts,
And he was lit, like he was sort of isolated by how he was lit. He had that glow, and
it was brilliant. But back to the, kind of making fun of some of those themes you see in these movies. But also, he's also like kind of, here's a girl who rejects him, and here's something where he kind of has to, that actor BS. He's kind of stripped a little. They both kind of walk. I suspect they both are a little more adult. Yeah, there's a mad rush. They're not fundamentally changed. Yeah. Which I think is a little more real more true to real life. They're changed, totally. They've grown, but it's not this, it's a new day. It's a new beginning. I like that, Katie, but it's not a brand new day. There's still, what was one of the most dramatic moments in the film is, can they get online to fill out their thing to get their government subsidy because they've met the minimum hours? It's almost it made me think of, if you're a seasonal hunter or seasonal fisher, and so there's certain rules about that will allow you to get employment insurance, and the rules are slightly different. And it's like you could have put that little comic moment in something in Newfoundland, so I thought that was kind of cool. And also showing it's like, they're not going back to start a business or some other individual's bullshit. You're going back to their lives,
Yeah, and maybe even just confronting the problems or the issues they were having that they were maybe trying to get away from, and they, it's just interesting to note that, you think you can leave your problems behind and do something like that, but they just, doesn't matter how far you go, they'll follow you. So and it really forced them to confront some of those things. So
they sort of seemed like, when they arrived, they sort of seemed like man boys, like 30 is the new 20 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I have to say, just when you mentioned that, Rob, just now, they were a little discombobulated, not to any great degree, when they arrived. When they left, there seemed to be a little bit of peace. I mean, there was some sadness because there's
making crepes.
There's
making crepes.
Yeah.
No, I agree completely, and that's what I kind of like. That there's a little bit of growing up. That some of their they faced some of their BS, and grew a little, but not that. Some crazy, and there's still some poignancy. I'm sure the little Thomas, there's a part of me, the way the character was playing out, that I thought, he would, if I was different, my dad was different, maybe we would have this conversation. But like Big Thomas said, nothing would have changed. You'd still be getting on this helicopter. Nothing would change. You did see your dad, kind of thing. Like, you don't need, don't think you need that. You don't need that cathartic moment. And I thought that has some real value there. Listen, why don't we, I think there's a couple more things we can pull out a theme, but I wanted to catch up quickly with the chat. Vlad says here, the film also is honest about not over-glorifying how the Inuit live in isolation. Issues with suicide, alcohol, and depression are touched on, which I thought was almost like a Canadian moment. Or not a Canadian, it's not a Canadian moment, but it makes me think of, what we know about northern life on reserves, and that, these social issues they face. But what do you guys think? Like, I mean,
well, it didn't ignore it. I mean, it pretty much was just the one character, but that committed suicide. But the town that it takes place in, Kullorsuaq, I'm probably going to mispronounce that. 453, according to Wikipedia, 453 residents. So the loss of one young guy, that's a pretty big deal. And it was nicely handled.
When you look at Northern Canada, where the suicide rate is multiples of the national rate in small communities, like, it's well, another shame on our country.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, it didn't, and I wasn't glad that there was a character who did that, but I'm glad they mentioned it at least.
That they had a character that did that. That there was part of it. Do you think, though, one thing I kind of twigged at in my own politics, the explanation of, there's just nothing to do there, and then they got to go to town if they want to, and or it's like, I think there's a deeper, like, all the actors are local, all the actors are Inuit, and they all have Danish names. They're all Petersons, Christensens, Nielsen's. They're all like, I mean, it's Denmark took over, and much like Canada, it's there. It's like, yep, whatever you are about, you're mostly about us now. Like, I mean, there's, so that I don't think was touched on, although not really one of the points of the film, but I kind of. You buying that?
Yeah, several characters were mixed race. Sorry, Katie. There was a couple of mixed race characters I thought that you could tell. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just to say that may have not have been in France's place to delve into the issues of Danish colonialism, I guess. But look what
kind of
did,
a pot calling the kettle black.
Well, I guess
we all go to French Polynesia.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't get me wrong. It wasn't like, oh dear God, this film's ruined. I just remember that it was like, that is not the only thing going on up there.
That's a good observation.
Although at the same time, it is interesting, like the Inuit had agency. As he says, he may be hiding still in his home, but he is like kind of no. They voted to which we have in Canada. It's plenty of communities that no, we're a dry town because we're a dry reserve because we're and that so it isn't. Again, I'm not trying to make a huge deal about it. More it's like just one of those. Wait, what now?
Yeah.
All right.
In terms of isolation, I just wanted to say that did you get a chance to look at where this was on the map of Greenland?
Yeah.
It's like 2/3 of the way up on the western side, and it's actually farther north than the northern tip of Baffin Island. So it's we're not talking about the fun cosmopolitan southern.
And isn't it on an island?
Itself is an island. I actually did the Google Street View and took a sort of a metaphorical walk around, and it's pretty actually cool to do. But
It's cool.
Unreal.
Well, and that kind of goes back to something you were talking about, Jim, about that. And I do it's almost, and maybe this is a perfect thing to talk about it as a theme, but then move into the look as well. Because, place was, you could say it was a visual theme. That set, it worked, the film works so hard to make us feel the place. There's got to be a point to that other than just, hey, it's pretty. But here, I just want to catch up on some of these chats, and then we're going to go to that. Does that work for you guys?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Joiners.
Okay, let's. Okay, so we've got Richard chimed in, and this is something we were all talking about earlier. Richard, Hollywood would never let the son leave without having first had the big conversation with Dad. Absolutely, maybe some indie. Okay, Vlad saying to me, Rob, The Crucible. This film slightly reminded me of Walkabout from Australia. Although that bigger movie hits that much harder. You know what? Maybe we got to put. I don't know, Jim. Have you seen this flick, Walkabout?
I think they used to play it late at night. So it's one of those things. You'll have it on in the background. I was sort of an insomniac kid that had CKND on all the time. So I think it might be one of two movies I'm thinking about. But yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. Ahmed, for anyone who's not coming from we are an Arctic country. And sometimes it feels like that here in Winnipeg. But northern countries, usually the overall name of the people of that far north in many countries, I'm not sure about Finland, like Laplanders from northern Finland, but most of them Inuit is kind of the name. And it'd be interesting to find out how many Inuit, when they've seen this film, what their take is on it. Because it's still about two white guys going there. They might go, oh, okay, I'm not totally insulted by this. Yeah. Call me back when there's a movie about us. We're not just a very well drawn context for these two white boys figuring this shit out.
Yeah.
Okay. Richard. Beautiful scene when half the town was gathered to watch while the guys used dial up to fill out their government forms. Right? It was dramatic. And it's like, are they going to make it? Are they going to get the doll?
Yeah. That was good. It was a great scene.
And the time that it was like, okay, yes, no, 750, yes, go, 3, all right. That was kind of...
And the little bickering in between.
These were pros. These guys are veterans.
Yeah.
But also, who hasn't been there when somebody's, I'll just operate the gizmo for you. We've all had it done to us and perhaps done it ourselves. We're all above average. Okay, Vlad, Rich, okay, he's talking to Richard. Okay. Oh my goodness, Shawshank!
Hey.
Good to see you here, man. You're into it. You know what? Feel free to chime in. I'm sure some of the folks in the chat can catch you up. Okay, Ahmed says some Danish people can speak Inuit, which they're living in Greenland. Absolutely. Okay, everyone's saying hi to Ahmed and to Jelly Duck and everything, which is awesome. Oh, we got another new person. Well, actually, he's been around before, but Dragon Movie Guy.
Yay! Hi, Dragon Movie Guy.
Okay, he just did a review for Greenland. That would be, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the action End of the World. I believe it's an End of the World action with Gerard Butler. What is it with Eastern Canada getting so many movies about it lately? I wish it was about like in Labrador, but actually Greenland is, it's a Danish holding, eh? Like a protectorate. It's part of Denmark. Denmark. I do know the word. You know what? Maybe that's a job for the other half of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars to, maybe throw it in the chat. But good to see you here, Dragon Movie Guy. Yes. Richard, on the felt a positive vibe in the movie in that problems are acknowledged, but signs of community agency in dealing with them. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the context seems to be well drawn. Does that make sense to you, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. I entirely agree with that. It's not that they need, it's not that they need help and they need, because we know how that has played out before.
Yeah. Like the way you put it. Oh, that's played out before.
Yeah.
Well said. Okay,
yeah,
Vlad.
It's been that way all along, so yeah.
Vlad, talking about Walkabout, first really big film out of Australian cinema, introduced Jenny Agutter. No way. Oh, now I have to see this.
Yep.
And her young brother marooned in the outback with coming of age Aborigine, like another young man, an Aboriginal Indigenous Australian. Okay. So, you know what? Dragon Movie Guy, Gerard's flick. You know what? Folks, go check out Dragon Movie Guy's channel. I'll put a link to this review in, I always usually pin something for stuff that came up in the chat in the course of the show. Dragon Movie Guy, send me that link. I'll make sure I pin it. I'll make sure I watch it and also pin it in the first comment when this movie's, or when this video's finished, okay? All right. That's somebody else. The Upside Down.
Oh, hey. Yay.
Good to see you here.
Working.
All right. Everybody's chatting with each other. Okay. And the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. Gradual shift toward more autonomy in recent years. Thank you very much. This is why Richard L. is 50% of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars. Be sure to watch the credits. And stay tuned to find out how you can be part of the whole team here in what is the best chat on the internet. I'm saying that now, folks. We're small, but we're mighty. Okay, let's get back to our agenda. And although it's going to kind of hook into theme, we are going to kind of start talking about, let's say the look, the feel of the thing. Katie, why don't you start us off there? What would you say about the look of it? I mean, right to the cinematography, everything.
I absolutely loved the look of the movie. But I mean, I would probably say I'm a bit biased because I have, I have a strong affliction to Arctic communities and Antarctic communities in general. They're some of the most, the places I've been to, they've been some of the most profound places I've ever visited. So I think it just, from watching this movie, it just reinforced my, positive image I have of these places that, they're just so striking, and not just the scenery and everything else, but the people there, and they're just they're inspiring. Just what the history. There's with their history and how they live, and yeah, it's just I just found it to be remarkable that way. Yeah, so that's probably.
Would you say, Katie, like Jim alluded to this before, but in some ways it does have a documentary feel, like, but not cinema verite, but what it reminded me of, Katie, honestly, is that sometimes it reminded me of that Icelandic documentary that you and Richard recommended and we saw at the Gimli Film Festival.
Yeah. Oh,
a lot
Yes.
of locked off shots.
Yeah.
Not as long as in the documentary where it's like, oh my goodness, are we ever going to stop watching this landscape? Because it just goes on.
Yeah. Well, and I think as far as some people commenting about it feeling like a documentary, like Jim had mentioned, he had seen somebody write that. Part of that might just be because I think a lot of the Inuit people, they weren't professional actors, so they were just people that lived there. So
they're
it kind of
they're
gave
hiring
it that,
a lot of locals.
yeah, who just weren't actors by trade. So there's that moment, especially it feels there's probably some moments more than others where it might feel like a documentary. So for instance, when the two Tomases are with that Inuit man and he's going through his photo albums, like that could easily happen in a documentary where he's just going on about his looking back on all his photos of growing up and everything else. That's like straight out of a documentary playbook, I would think. But
Yeah. Well, and that's a great, that's an excellent point, Katie, and an interesting, another, like a choice of the look of the film, to say, kind of show the stories, using that as a cue, as a visual cue, even as the other two, the Thomases are kind of getting it, but because they don't understand the thing he's saying, they're not
guessing.
getting everything. They're
and
guessing.
it's funny to see the subtitles, and then when they respond and when they don't get it, it's kind of it's a little bit of good humor there.
Got a little moment, yeah.
Oh, I think he's talking about this. No, that's not what he's saying.
But you don't feel like they're looking like fools. They're doing they really are doing
for sure.
their
That's
best
what any
to
one of
figure
us
it
would
out.
be doing, right?
Yeah.
I've been in that position. I mean, I've been in almost that exact position. My sister and I, we backpacked in South America for 6 months. We stayed with a family friend in Brazil. She didn't know any English. She only knew Portuguese. And we were staying at her house. And
you're saying the Portuguese as a second language education in Fort Richmond, Winnipeg, was lacking?
Yeah. So, and sure enough, Andrew and I, my sister and I, we sat there and she was doing all the talking. And then we were guessing just like those two guys were. And then next thing we knew, some young man came to the door and we're like,
hey.
And he's like, oh, didn't Elena tell you? And we're like, probably, but we didn't understand anything she was saying. So he explained everything to us. Oh, I'm a friend. I'm here, to take you on a tour and blah, blah, blah. And it just, so he spoke perfect English as a young, Brazilian man. So yeah.
That's awesome.
But yes, I can relate to those two for sure.
Well, and Jim, you've done travel, as have I. Like, I've been pretty fortunate, my real deep dive into the local scene has been with Germans, and their English is excellent. So, I've never really, but I've certainly been, like when I was in China, even it was only 5 years ago. So there is a lot more English, especially in the big cities, but it's nothing like Europe.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where I'm just politely nod and say, sure, I'll take that. No idea what I just bought. No idea what he's actually putting in the thing. The food that I don't know what it is anyway. I'm really just, it's really just
That's great.
Okay, sure, I'll take the thing you're pointing at. Not 100% sure what you're asking, though. Oh, hey, I got that part right. He wanted me to know if I wanted it in my thing. that I don't know what it is.
I
Still,
was,
second, third best meal I had in China. Sorry, Jim. Yeah.
no, I was just going to say, even a place like Poland, where I actually did the finger pointing randomly at the menu thing, it reminds me of the Steve Martin line, they brought me a shoe with cheese on it, but it was actually pretty good what I did end up getting. But they, Poland, which is Eastern Europe, so not too far away from, say, Germany, even had some trouble there communicating. So
Yeah.
When we talk about the look, guys, another thing that struck me was, like, first of all, the cinematographer never had a problem. Put the camera on sticks. Let the space speak for itself.
Yeah.
Just let it be. Like, I keep thinking about something you're always saying, Jim, about letting a scene breathe. Even when they're far off in the distance or there's something happening, it just lets it naturally happen. It's I thought it was a really naturalistic, without being stylized, like a naturalistic kind of cinematography and look. Even the lighting, it was never dramatic or, even in that midnight sky, that gloaming, that omnipresent gloaming when you're that far north. It wasn't like, weird and now we're gonna get surreal.
It had a different look than Midnight Sky. Sort of like as far as lighting and everything, and it sort of took place in a similar part of the world.
You're right, Katie. Like, there were some points that felt to me like winter, but I think for this, and it almost hooks first the look, it's like, yep, that's all real snow. That just looks like it looks like parts of Manitoba could look like that.
looks
Especially
cold.
go really north. But the snow, everything looked like it felt cold. The lighting, the way they chose the when they shot outdoors, but even just that, high noon, even in Winnipeg, we're far enough north. The high noon is the sun is somewhere, over there, as it angles in. You've got a shadow of 8 miles long at noon. Things like that I thought were really cool. What did you guys think of? And somebody had already mentioned it in the chat, and you guys talked about it, but I was like kind of crazy about all the sweaters. You've got this kind of weird sort of hipster cool look on the two Thomases. And they're toques at times, and it's like, then the Canadians ball cap, because, sure. But then everyone else's look, like, what did you think of that? Like their actual physical look, even the kids with some of the, probably a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years behind the times, but that kind of urban hip hop style.
Yeah.
If you looked when they went to Clubby, which I guess was their little community club, I took a look at, they had a couple of shots that were just the kids. It was setting up for and I kind of enjoyed that little segment too. They're singing a song, and there's the drummer, the bass, the guitarist, the singer, and they each had a different kind of look, and it sort of felt like their own. Like, it wasn't, one guy had vaguely camouflage sweats. It wasn't camouflage, but and it wasn't. It didn't look like they were over coiffed, or sometimes you get the sense that the costumers doing a bit too much. But it just, each person had their own look. Miss Greenland had the sunglasses and the cropped, the kind of I guess Sheena Easton haircut, for lack of a better term. I don't know, but
even the point where it's like, she's put some effort into that coif.
Yes.
So no toque or hood on her in the freezing effing cold, like any of us as Canadian teenagers would have done. There was a moment where I'm like, I'm with you, sister. I would have done the same effing thing. I mean, a little older, it's like, oh my God, how can I bundle my stuff in more?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was definitely a nice part of it. Yeah, it looked cold. They had the frozen eyelashes, or not frozen, but the sort of the frosted eyelashes, the frosted facial hair.
Even just the trim on their clothing, you know how it can pick up that frost.
Yeah. And at no time, I don't recall, I don't think they complained about it. So that was nice too. It was just part of the deal.
Yeah.
But it looked great. There was a couple of shots. It's almost like I'm trying to think.
And they would have been there in summer then, like for that gloaming. Like, I mean,
Yes.
you know,
The it almost reminded me, not that this was a trifle, this movie or anything, but it makes me think of a gentler, smaller movie that had a heck of a cinematographer. If you remember, there's a fairly famous cinematographer that did Lady Hawk when we did that a few months ago, and sort of the look of the movie was better than the movie itself, right? That's sort of not the case here, but it just, some of those landscape shots, like just the held shots or the time lapse of that one sort of ridge that the island coming right out of the sea, you know, in the harbor there.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And the colors too, the colors of the houses are obviously, you know,
very Scandinavian.
Very Scandinavian.
Like, I mean, it reminded me of The 12th Man, like the film we saw in 2020.
And you can get a little bit precious with that. You know, it looks cozy and everything, but I didn't think it came across as precious. No. You know, the houses lit, you know, in the sort of the darkness, and each one of them had just sort of color
kind
coded.
of similar to
very Newfoundland as well. Sort of if you
Iceland,
pictures of the battery in St. John's.
Northern Norway, like you know, a Scandinavian kind of vibe.
Yeah.
What
just the handling of the cold weather, I thought was really refreshing for this Canadian. I mean,
it'll be interesting
compared to Midnight Sky.
Yeah, of course, the King Kong, or
of course you can survive. Getting in the drink and
that wet.
Yeah.
Without
shelter immediately. Yeah.
Do you and I'm wondering, like, it'd be interesting to see an interview with the cinematographer and the production designer, but a lot of it looked like they're like, no, it's all going to be found. The actors are going to be like, it's almost like it's not a Dogma 95 film, but it could have been.
Yeah.
You know, they could have just gone a little further, but they really were like, no, we don't need to dress this set. Mm-hmm. It comes dressed. It's everything makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know what? So they really did, and that's a great directorial and artistic choice, like from the whole creative team. It's like, no, we're gonna. I suspect it was, and that they were willing to let the place look what it looks like, and just put the camera there. You know what? Sure, you know, you pick the right lens. There's still choices. There's still creative choices to draw out the beauty and the starkness and the contrast where you can. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was. I can't speak well enough of the look. Like, I mean, was there anything for you guys that was an eye poker? Like in that kind of looky, you know, cinematographer, lighting, or anything.
Like
Katie?
They took you out of it at all, or
yeah. Like, Katie, did anything poke you in the eye, or was it all just?
No, I agree with how this discussion earlier about how the youth were dressed, and that they would very likely be dressed that way, because especially now, you know, when they do have connection, they are connected to the world more now, and they want to be, you know, they're sort of in conflicting worlds in a way, and that's their way to be a part of that world without actually being a part of it is by dressing that way. So
yeah.
The cinematography was Sebastian Godefroy. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
There's only allowed 2 first names, I think.
Yeah,
Sebastian and Thomas, because both lead actors' first names are Thomas.
Yeah.
The director Sebastian Bettbetter, for those who don't know. So, there was one shot actually that I thought was it didn't take me out of it, but I thought was kind of interesting. When the taller Thomas is following the kids to church, he can't sleep, I think him and the other Thomas had an argument, so he's going, I'm leaving.
He's
getting
got a
out."
bottle of moonshine.
Yeah, well, was
Yeah.
it moonshine? Yeah. Okay, so he has the bottle with him, and he's walking up the hill to the church, and the sun is behind the church, so you can't see the sun, but it reflects in the clear bottle. Just for a second, it was just that little touch of like a little golden,
Almost like a ting.
yeah, and I
But
thought
not.
that was kind of a nice, very subtle, a subtle little touch. But I quite like that.
Well, they just caught a little magic. It'd be. I think it would reward us all to, to dig a little further if there's any relevant interviews or anything with the creative team. Now, here's another thing. It's part look, but it's a great way to hook into sound, which I also thought was unique for this film. Like one of the things I was like, and like, this is like any Canadian reserve, like Indigenous, not Canadian reserve, Indigenous reserve, Indigenous First Nation. You know, it's like, wow, there's got to be at least one person in a cowboy hat, and there he is, singing like old timey country music. And I wrote it down at the time, and I was like, you know, is this it? I mean, for them to have that note, especially earlier in the movie when there's kind of the welcome party. Hey, well, company coming, let's throw a party. And some of the music was like old time country music, even with some like American country, like Hank Williams, and then some yodeling in there and that. And it was like kind of, it just seems to be such a big part of Indigenous culture in Canada and in the United States. And then I'm like, well, so it can't be just our pushing this. Here's a French film in Greenland, and they're putting it in the movie. Like, I don't think, and I'm wondering I'm kind of curious, because it was a distinct, like you heard a lot of diegetic music that was like, some of it's like, yeah, you know what, the kids are all into sort of hip hop and beatboxing and then just some more like almost indie rock, but old timers into that country music. And I'm like, I had to ask you guys, like, I mean, did you note it? Do you think it's unique? What do you think about that? And I guess we're talking about sound right now.
Sure.
If that works for you guys.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Did you want to go first, Katie, or
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so I noted that myself, and I thought that was going to be the start of. I mean, it was fairly early in the movie, where the dad says, "Yeah, they're throwing a party in your honor. There'll be nibbles. Here's some seal liver in a plastic bag. Is there anything to drink? No." But,
I liked the panic that ensued.
yeah, like, how are we going to survive? Now,
How are these three Frenchmen going to do without wine?
quick tangent. We were talking, when we watched Fat Man about whether or not, there was any true sort of laughs. There were about 5 or 6 times that I was watching by myself. The rest of the family was asleep. And I just sort of burst out laughing fairly loudly, spontaneously. And that was like, they sort of look at each other like, oh God, we're stuck up here with no booze. And I sort of let one
That
out.
was so good.
It was genuinely funny in a bunch of spots.
It was,
But,
totally.
anyways, if you listen to any kind of First Nations radio station, it's dominated by
It's
country.
a big part of the scene.
Country music, yeah.
Scene.
At the same time, they sort of did check a few boxes with the hip hop, and there was country, and then there was that I would argue that when the older gentleman joined the kids in the club, in the community center,
clubby.
it was a little bit punk rocky. Okay,
Okay, was that it? Because I was kind of getting indie rock vibe, but that would work too. Yeah.
a little bit. It was messy and kind of forceful, but not negative, but it was so there was sort of giving nods to different genres. I think maybe that was a statement of just about. I was sort of wondering, and I put it in my notes, is this going to get to a comment on culture, like who's got the more superior culture? Is it French, or in fact, does that even matter? It turns out I don't think it did, but
No, I think they were just kind of giving more realism to the space.
Yeah, local color. Yeah.
What back to the sound. So back to just that scene, Jim. There we get, and then who jumps in? Tall Thomas, and does some slam poetry thing.
Yeah.
Very left wing slam poetry.
Yes.
Was it just me, you guys, or did the locals kind of have a bit of a, what the hell was that? I think he thinks it's music. Or was that maybe that's just me?
Well,
they didn't seem to be quite enthusiastic in there.
French, I actually quite listening to French rap because it's you don't know what they're talking about, but it sounds cool. And I think France has a genuine scene that we're maybe not super akin to, but
I don't think that was rap. I think it was slam poetry. I think that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
Or it could have been
can be a pretty thin line there sometimes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it could be MC style. Yeah. Rapping.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
It sort of reminded me a little bit of the rapping character on Cheyenne's boyfriend on Superstore. He's this little white rapper. I think it could have been that. Is this the genuine article? Because he's from Paris, but I didn't really go.
Yeah, I don't think they were going wow. I don't think it was a wow. I think it was a wow. Well, that was something.
It could have been.
What do you think, Katie?
Yeah, it could have just been something. It could be what you thought it was, Rob, but it could also just be we have never heard anything like that before, and it's how do you respond to that? Doesn't mean they necessarily didn't like it. It was just kind of surprising and taken aback and just trying to process how to respond and So it's not maybe it's not so much they didn't like it, but what just happened? Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying they hated it, but I think there was a. Oh, okay, he's done.
Oh, is he done? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting though when you talk about that fine line between slam poetry and rap. There is a huge, and this is, what I'm just going to say it mostly to remind us that maybe it's something worth talking about in another video, that's more relevant. But yeah, poor black people rap, educated white people slam poetry. And there's a real, a cultural resentment there because it's oh, great. There's a, not appropriation, but there's a conflict there. And like I said, maybe if we run into a film, it might be worth remembering this point. But I don't think, though, that was the point of the scene. I think it was mostly, we chipped in and then everyone went, okay. And then we moved on. All right. Well, what else, though, about the sound? When the soundtrack did come in, I thought it was almost like 80s electronica, kind of synth. Even the I bet you even the xylophone or whatever the I thought it was like a xylophone kind of charming, bells sort of ringing, but a lot of that synth. What did you guys think? I
think that the music. The soundtrack, I think it all fit into the film well enough that the sound's a bit strange, but nothing really stands out for me as far as although I saw this movie a bit further back than both of you did. I saw it probably a few weeks ago, but I think it fits so well in that you don't notice that something was wrong. Whereas,
I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, whereas something like Tenet, that movie, the soundtrack really stuck out for me there because it was definitely bigger, symphonic, and probably bigger budget, and so
here is the soundtrack. Well,
yeah.
but I'm even thinking And again, back to almost like it had a sound stage, a soundscape, much like the cinematography. You heard the crunching in the snow. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I do
when the
remember
snow
that.
seemed
Yeah.
different, you heard that, not super obvious, but super realistic. Like very, you know, when you noted it, it was like, oh yeah, I know that. It sounds like real snow. You know, they did great Foley work, or they're great on, you know, like, I mean, they really did. They recorded that sound and made sure that they did the Foley work after, the right sound editing. Like it really, it had a great sound vibe. Like you know, and not the obvious windswept, shh,
Yeah.
you know. They never did once do a blizzard. Not once.
No.
Not,
You didn't see dogs, you know, hiding from the wind or anything.
Yeah.
but they were on the edge of town, like dogs are in those kind of communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're work animals, and they keep other shit away, and sometimes they maul a child.
Yeah.
Nature of living in that kind of environment, you know.
Yeah.
The shots whenever they were hunting, I thought the shots were, because they were so kind of percussive. There was a couple
A real
of
crack.
yeah, and especially in the silent cold air, which, you know, as Manitobans we know what that can be like when it's -30 and you're out in the country. It's silent. So if you pull off a shot, it's gonna give you an impact there. So I thought that was good. And it both, you know, any kind of thing like startled those guys when they were shooting. They kind of physically jumped. So that was kind of a neat effect too.
All right. Here, let's take a minute, if it's cool with you guys, just to catch up with the chat. It's been, you know, they've been having their adventures, but it's time to stop that, interfere. I feel almost like I'm my father opening up the door into the basement. All right, what are you kids doing down there? Okay, let's go. All right, Upside Down. Everyone's saying hello to the Upside Down. Okay, here, I wanted to go back here, and this might refer to earlier in the conversation, but Vlad65, just, you know what, for those who don't know, Walkabout, the first... oh, right, I did talk about this. Okay, sorry, guys, I'm repeating myself, because I'm that person, apparently. Okay, yeah. All right. Here we are. This was the thing. Okay, so Vlad, I also learned recently that during World War II, Greenland was occupied by the United States and Britain during the Battle of the Atlantic. And they did the same thing with Iceland, didn't they? For all intents and purposes, they went, hello, locals, we can occupy you or we can be invited in. You know, if memory serves, you know. Okay, Shashank. And this goes to you, Katie, being the travel professional, the tourism professional. Shashank says, it is on my bucket list to visit Greenland and the Arctic Circle before I die. Been that way ever since I saw the Polar Express when he was 5.
Incredible.
That's crazy. Well, you know what, Katie, what do you have to say to our man in Chennai?
Yeah, that's remarkable. It's you know, movies are, you know, one of many information sources that influence our travel decisions. What makes movies especially unique is that, you know, we can, you know, develop images of a place and expectations of a place based on all kinds of different information sources. Could be from friends and family, could be from marketing organizations, but what makes movies really unique as something that influenced your desire to go to Greenland is it's considered an autonomous information source. So it doesn't come from a place that they're trying to sell you on it. I don't think the Polar Express's intention was to get you to go to Greenland someday. But so it's quite
No.
yeah. So movies are there's also all kinds of other examples of where you know, movies have influenced like just hordes of tourists. I mean, one example we all really know that's quite that's well known, I should say, is Lord of the Rings. It really just drove people, drove people in droves to visit New Zealand, and there's actually the numbers to back it up that it really influenced travel there. So,
well, let me ask this, Katie. Why, like, for a lay person like myself, or Shashank, folks in our chat, they know movies, tourism less so. I suspect.
Yeah.
For the layperson, why does a movie connect to us and make us want to go where it is? Like, why do you think that is? Like that visceral connection we make with the movie, then all of a sudden it's getting us to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah. You know what? I think it varies among. It's going to be subjective. So, I mean, you and I can watch the same movie, and one of us will want to go there, one of us won't. So it's definitely subjective and personal, based on our perception, how we perceive the place and everything else. But so it's gonna be different for everybody. But yeah, one reason, like I said, is because movies are autonomous. They're not trying to sell you to come. It becomes a bit more of a, there's more credibility, reliability, and trustworthiness, I guess, from the source. They're not trying to sell you on the place. What they're showing is they're not, the scenery that they're showing, it's not because they want you to visit. It's just part of the movie.
Do you think part of it also may be we're watching a movie, our guard is down? Actually, we're consciously trying to keep our guard down. We suspend disbelief. So we're being communicated to in a movie on such an emotional level that we become emotionally attached to the place the movie is in, because it's not even that the movie isn't trying to sell us. Let's say it is, because I do think it uses all these things to sell us an idea, including this sense of place. But we're totally open to it because we're trying to feel the movie as much as we're ever thinking about it. Does that ring true to you?
That's absolutely right. I mean, just to put basically what you're saying in another way, imagery hugely influences, how we perceive a place and what we expect if we were to go to visit. But part of that, part of how we create images in our minds of place is how, when we perceive them, how they make us feel. So there's like, not to get too technical, but there's a cognitive component, and where it's how you visualize a place, but then there's also the affective component of how the place, how visualizing that place makes you feel. So
how it made a 5-year-old Tamil boy in Chennai, India, feel like he needed to go there.
Yeah, It's on my bucket list too.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple other things to catch up more in the chat. You know what? Vlad65 says, the locals were very effective and added to that sense of place. Absolutely, because they all felt real. Not directed. Like, at no time did they feel directed. And now I will be the zany one. I'm this guy of the village. Okay. Here's another one, back to the kind of place, the look and the travel. Richard L. Another movie that really let the beautiful scenery speak for itself was The Last Bit of Three Idiots when they go up to Ladakh. Absolutely. There's like that third act was a whole bunch of, I need to go there.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. We all had that visceral, that effective or affective experience. Is it affective or effective, Katie?
Affective.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Shashank, I haven't seen this movie, but a film that captured the cold nature of place perfectly, in my opinion, was Road to Perdition, with beautiful cinematography. Shashank, I don't know about you, Katie, or you, Jim. I for myself, it certainly had it. It did get that feel, but I felt that Road to Perdition was a very stylized film. And so I didn't quite get that vibe like you did. I don't know, Jim. What do you remember Road to Perdition?
Yeah, it was based on a graphic novel, I believe, unless I'm... so that sometimes can have an effect. Not quite as bad as... or not quite as overwhelming as, say, Sin City. But, yeah, I think it would probably have an effect on the look of it. So.
Yeah.
But,
I thought it was stylized.
It's been like 15 years, maybe. I don't know.
20?
But yeah. I think
what about you, Katie? Paul Newman was the old bad guy.
Seen that movie, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it was a gangster movie. Tom Hanks, Paul Newman as the old gangster who sells out. Basically, Tom Hanks ends up, he's a thug and a hitman for Paul Newman, and he ends up on the wrong side of him. His older kid and his wife are killed, so he's all of a sudden he's on the road to perdition with his kid, with his younger son, and who's chasing him was Jude Law as the crazy hitman.
With bad teeth.
Oh, wow.
With bad teeth and crazy.
No.
Now is this ringing a bell?
I've seen another movie with Jude Law with bad teeth, but I don't think it was...
Was that...
Was there another one?
And now I'm going to kill you.
He was like some blogger, like a wannabe
Contagion?
journalist.
Contagion.
Contagion,
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, this is not the same.
But didn't he have bad teeth in that one too? He was wearing something there.
That's a whole
Or
month.
maybe it was always a mask or something. Okay. All right, let's get back to the chat, guys, before we move on to... Because we still have the director, the performers, although we've talked a lot about the performances already.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's Richard and... okay. Vlad says, again, it felt cold. I read the filmmaker tested his equipment in store freezer rooms to prepare for the shoot. Yeah, they knew where they were going.
Really? Wow.
That's awesome. And you know what? Here in Winnipeg, because they're shooting all year here in Winnipeg. How to keep your equipment warm is just every camera crew here, Winnipeg-based camera crew knows how to keep the gear going. Wow. You know, how to make sure that the lenses don't get up with fog or moisture inside or all that stuff. Yeah, it's
production.
It's not the art, it's more the craft of filmmaking in a cold weather climate. Okay, Richard. Thanks for that, Vlad. Richard, casting the two. Oh, okay, we're going to pin this. Richard, when we get into the performances, we'll get into the storytellers. Okay. Jim, you know what? This is all stuff I think that's almost like kind of sets us up for later. Okay. Performance related. Okay, Vlad, on sound. Liked the soundtrack. Reminded me of the French band Air. I'm unfamiliar with the French band Air. What about Jim? You're nodding.
No,
you're nodding and then shaking your head.
Well, I was going to say that the composer we failed to mention is called Miniza, and I don't know if that's a collective or an individual person. I was just sort of trying to scope it out while we were on air here, but that needs a little more digging, I think. But
okay.
I dug it.
Katie, what about you? Do you recognize this band?
I haven't. Maybe
we're gonna have to Google it up.
Yeah,
perhaps. Because he's really up to speed on those kinds of things.
Okay. Upside Down, he's working on his Lord of the Rings video now, and we'll look forward to that, Dan.
Nice.
All right. Okay. All right. Some banter back and forth in the chat about Lord of the Rings, and we'll let them have their adventure there.
Yeah.
This audiobook. Oh, here's back to travel and the look and everything. This is an interesting comment from Dragon Movie Guy. Cinematography in The Hangover made me want to visit my adopted hometown of Las Vegas. lol, lol, nothing in caps, quite like a Vegas hangover. It's like, Dragon movie guy, nothing better than love that kind of localized quote. So there you go, Katie.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the call to get drunk and hungover that connects you to a place. That's awesome.
Well, some of the things that I did, just briefly did a bit of reading up on was, sometimes people just want to visit a place, because it was in the movie. So like I read about something where people went to visit a staircase in the Bronx that was in the Joker. Yeah. So it can be just as quirky as that. Like people will just all of a sudden, did you do it, Chip?
No, I was going to say that there's in Georgetown in DC there is a staircase from The Exorcist, of course.
That I've read about too, yeah.
It's got a plaque, and I actually had Carla, there's some shots of me. I posed falling down it, a la Jason Patrick's father, the priest. Sorry, spoiler alert. And so Chinese family walked along and saw me doing this, and they took a picture of me pretending to fall down the stairs, and they were like, "Oh, crazy guy!" And so I've got a picture with the dad of the family. Anyway.
Oh, funny.
Yeah,
cool.
So.
I have a picture with me of all places, because of who I was traveling with, on platform 9 3/4, pushing the cart halfway into the wall. Tackiest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But the woman I was traveling with, she was just so into that there we were. And then when I took a picture of her, I took a great picture of her, but I managed to miss the cart, miss the whole action. She's like, thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So the guy who didn't want the picture got it. The woman who wanted the picture, I totally jerked her over. It was terrible. Going back to what you're both laughing about, Shashank. I think going back to the point of movies driving us to visiting places, we want to place ourselves in situations where the events took place. And so the location seem a perfect reference point. And you got a point there. A couple of Richards chiming in on a couple of items quickly here before we move on. Two other Far North movies that come to mind that are worth watching. Iqaluit and Atanarajuat, the Fast One Runner, and I kind of mushed that. Atanarjuat. Thank you very much. Atanarjuat, the Fast Runner. Both Canadian films.
They're good for sure.
All right. Okay, and going back to soundtrack. Whoops. There we go. Richard Air had a big hit in the 90s called Sexy Boy. It's on Richard's 90s playlist.
Oh, then I know them.
Genre is sort of synth pop, which, yes, I think the soundtrack is synth. Yeah, it's got that synthy kind of thing going on.
Okay, cool.
Folks, just so you know, and maybe Richard could send me a link to that playlist specifically, and I will pin it in the. I'll pin it. I'll put it in that first comment, that pinned comment. All right. Thanks very much, Richard. Okay, you know what? We should move on. The chat's doing their thing. We'll come back to some of these, the Upside Dan's comment, but I'm going to get it up on the screen. But folks, let's talk about, we've talked so much about the store, the performers, what I would actually say, the storytellers. You know what? You got the director, but in some ways, as the director's telling this overarching story, all the actors, all the performers, they're almost like mini storytellers in a way, acting out their character's story. So if it's cool with you, let's jump to the performers. Does that work for you guys?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess just to start it, Katie, what did you think of our two Thomases? Do they work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would agree with Richard's comment that we were going to pin here that
Yes.
I liked how they had. I liked how they were, good friends but different. Had they kind of bounced off each other well. They were different from one another, and in a way, it kind of as travelers, it kind of showed what just from that perspective, it showed what types of travelers they are, and they, who's one's more adventurous than the other, willing to try new things, like just pop that eyeball right in there and
and not even pop it, like gotta squeeze it and suck it out, like you're sucking the insides of an egg out of the shell.
That would be a hard no for me.
Keep them coming.
But
Me too.
but guys, doesn't that, it reminded me of a travel regret. I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. It's relevant to this exact point you're making,
Let's
Katie.
do it,
It's like a constant reminder. I should have had the jellyfish when I was in Shanghai.
Oh, right.
And it was offered, much like, Rob, do you like jellyfish? How the fuck am I going to like jellyfish? I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. See a lot of ocean around, a lot of jellyfish.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I regret it ever since.
Yeah,
as
I
I
can see
suspect that character, the
other Thomas.
The other Thomas will regret it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the older Thomas thinks it makes him somehow a mystical, special person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So, and this is exactly, Richard, the two Thomases had really hosted two Inuit in Paris, and the film resulted when they were invited to Greenland. Okay, so this is some of like the backstory. So
Cool.
the casting was a natural, and it worked. Yeah.
Totally.
I agree, Richard. I think, would you...
Well, that was Vlad.
Would you guys agree? Oh, sorry, Vlad 65. Why am I... You know what? Because Richard said something above it or below it. I don't know.
Yeah, he said something.
Oh, there we go. I'm hitting the wrong one. Casting. So Richard says this. This is for the podcast, folks. Casting the two Thomases as protagonists was smart. One more outgoing, one more conservative, would appeal to different segments of the audience. You know what, Richard? I'd actually say what it does is it sets up conflict, which is what all the audience wants to see. We should empathize with both, but you need conflict. If they're both reserved, it's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I guess why don't we just get rid of one and we'll just watch one reserved guy? Go ahead, Katie, you're saying?
Yeah, I think you're right. I do agree with Richard, though. I think that just based on my personality, I related to one Thomas more than the other. Mm-hmm. Just based on my personality, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd be the one to turn down the eyeball. I'd be the one to, wouldn't be going after the girl or whatever, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that you wouldn't. When you're given two characters that you may appeal, but characters aren't chosen to appeal to segments of audiences. Mm-hmm. They're designed to interact with each other, and you have. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. And that's the only thing the quibble I have, and it's just a quibble. Mm-hmm. Is mostly it's really the tall one is meant to challenge the short one, and sometimes vice versa. But I think he's designed to push the little guy. But
it's almost like they kind of need each other, and that like they make a good friendship.
A weird codependent thing.
They need to balance each other out. Yeah, and I think that I remember at the end of the movie where the taller Thomas says, it wouldn't have changed anything anyways. I almost felt relieved, like that was me being him, like, because that would have been me. I would have been the one to not confront my dad about that, and like for him to say that, I was so. But then the shorter one bounced. I think the taller one too. So you see this odd couple of a sort. Yeah. I mean, both kind of smelly and. Long-haired. There's so many similarities. It's almost they had to be charactered in some basic character way different. Otherwise, we'd have tall and short. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's the gag. Once taller, he reaches stuff on the top shelf. He can get down under the stove to get that one pan. You know. Anyway, okay. And then Vlad says, the two Thomases had really hosted two Inuit and Barris. The film resulted when they were invited. Oh, we might have to put Vlad on the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars, won't we, guys?
Where I'd like to. You obviously caught some articles. I did a quick look last night, but I just really quick, and it was 3 a.m, and
did no look.
yeah,
As one can tell. Katie apparently did no look either.
No, I didn't know that either.
But it's funny because these guys have a number of credits, but even their Wikipedia pages are pretty. I mean, they're French performers, but not.
You got to dig a little deeper. Yeah. Okay. Back to so as far as their performances go, though, they're both pretty solid. They were different as much as they look similar. They were different. They were different. You felt they were different human beings,
For sure.
you know, and realistic. Like the adventurous one wasn't, again, not that kind of,
Overly
overamped. Yeah, the overamped. Like, I mean, you know, that pumping up of the extremes, right?
Yeah,
you know, the really high drama, high adventure versus the mouse who doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, who you'd be wondering, how the hell did he get on the plane to go to Greenland?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like,
At the same time, they're both there, and it's a pretty heady journey. It's not like they're going to, you know, I think one of them said, you know, my dad brought me to Dieppe one day, which is a little Canadian reference, but, you know.
Well, he didn't say that. It was the other one saying he never brought you farther than Dieppe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. No, you're right. But it was, you never brought me farther. He never brought me farther than Dieppe.
Yeah. But they're both on this journey, you know, one in which I've never ridden in a helicopter. So they, you know, the final portion of the journey. Actually, I wanted to ask Katie about that. Knowing how far up it was in Greenland, that would have been, and these guys are sort of out of work or sort of partially employed working actors. Maybe the dad, you know,
funded
but that's. I mean, that's a journey.
I think I would imagine just the trip from, they would have flown to, I'm guessing they would have flown to Nuuk, I think it's called, the capital.
Yeah.
And then milk run it from there. Just that milk run alone would be.
Yeah.
I'm wondering though if it's a Scandinavian country. Are there certain things that are heavily subsidized to maintain a connection to that community? You know, are you pitching or are you getting a ride on a helicopter ride? Because when they were getting together at the end, you could see other people getting ready to go south.
That's true. Yeah.
You know,
and I noticed that it's interesting. I've been to Churchill before, and seen a lot of people come and go in the airport. And a lot of the people getting on the plane.
Well, that's where you did your master's, right? Like the research for your master's.
For my thesis. And a lot of the people getting on and off the planes were not tourists. Like, I mean, they do have chartered flights from tour companies, but a lot of, so it was sometimes hard doing interviews. I'm like, oh, none of these people are tourists, so I'll be back in a few hours.
Hello.
Yeah.
Local?
Yeah.
Never mind.
And
I
and
love
also,
your community. I'm having a wonderful time here.
Yeah. In 3G hell. Yeah.
Like a good Southerner.
Yeah.
She's from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Can't you tell?
No, but I mean, in all honesty, like, that joke aside, Churchill's like one of the most amazing places I've ever been in my life. So it's spectacular. I love it there.
Yeah.
Excellent. What about the dad? Because it's funny, actually, going back to those characterizations, you could almost say and again, another thing they didn't really exploit or play up like they would in my horrible, terrible, awful, guilty pleasure, The Big Bang Theory. I'm just so ashamed at the same time. I just can't help myself. but they didn't play it up, was that obviously little Thomas's dad was way more adventurous, way more like going with the flow, you know, ended up in Greenland, you know, it was so much more like the older Thomas, like, or the taller Thomas, you know, like,
I think
like, oh yeah, go ahead, Katie.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think you're right, but part of that could be maybe he was like the other Thomases, and maybe had, you know, some challenges back home. I guess his marriage fell apart, and maybe just tried to leave his problems behind and stay there. So maybe that was.
Well, it sounded like he kept going back. I think that was part of he was fighting. There's his buddy who, for a while, I was like, oh, is his buddy is that Robert who died a lover? And then it's like, oh, no, it wasn't.
No. Yeah.
But they were fighting. He went up there, then he came back, and he kept going back. And then the divorce, year later, lost his job. And then he went back up there to stay, you know, and maybe because there was a woman there was a home, there was a community, and he just, you know,
kind of had some roots.
Yeah, but that's a pretty adventurous kind of person. And even when there's a brief moments when he, like Nathan is talking to little Thomas, his son, and, you know, he tries to make the joke. It's like, yeah, you're, because he's complaining about his stepfather. Thomas is complaining about his stepfather, the shrink. And he's like, yeah, your mother really has a penchant for attracting weirdos, you know, weird guys.
Yeah.
Huh? You know, it's like Jim, who has a great joke at the top of the show. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. What? Why do you keep repeating that line? I'm not picking up the play. You know? Buying that? Anyone? Anyone?
Well, Vlad just...
I like how everything just stops and you stare at me like I'm a moron.
Vlad just brought up the point about the father just now, as you were mentioning that. So it was funny. One thing I wanted to before we get on too far, just getting a little bit on a tangent, is the aspect of hunting. How did that... I probably should have brought this up during story, but I know...
Or even theme.
Yeah, but and we just had sort of not mentioned it, but we see a dead polar bear at the end. There's seals that the characters actually shoot, and I know that might be troublesome for some people or what have you, but I mean, not me necessarily. There are other movies. I was trying to think of it. There's an Australian movie that was released right around the same time as Walkabout, and it's called Wake in Fright, I think it is. It was on Netflix for a bit, and there's a big kangaroo hunting scene that was sort of controversial at the time. But in this case, you know, it's a resource, right? So,
well, you know what? I'm wondering, Jim, like, so are you talking about the hunting as just it might be an offensive thing to show in the film? Or are you talking about the hunting? Because I think some of the hunting is like almost like goes to a setting of place. Like as far as an artistic choice, setting a place, there is a bit of that death. You know, I'm thinking about that idea of death and loss and how a community deals with that. But are you talking more about hey, there should have been a warning?
No, not so much that. I just know, you know, we're so used that if you sit through the credits at the end, you know, no animals were harmed during the filming of this movie.
There were animals harmed in this movie.
In this case, and then they actually showed the butchering of a seal that was fairly fresh, and the, you know, eating of the liver, and the like the eye. Instead of wing night, they have eye night. I guess I don't know, but. And then they have the actual butchering of it on the ice, and the sort of pools of bright red blood that come up. Very visually striking, but some of it I was a little bit like, you know, Just because I get a bit squeamish. But.
Yeah, I looked away for a bit, but I don't know about you, Katie. Myself, though, like, I didn't find it. Like, it's one of those things, and it's always very frustrating. You know, it's like, I was totally fine with it being there. Just because I'm looking away in it, okay, we could just bowdlerize, strip it, then you're like, okay, we're not really, like, it gives, it happens. B, it's so much part of living up north, hunting. Like, I mean, you know, like hunting to protect yourself from the polar bears. Like, I mean, it's a thing in Churchill. Like, we're like, you know what, I think one of the great things about watching these movies is that it forces us, Jim, as North American, you know, city dwellers, to go, the world is a bigger place. You know what? Whereas we're just turning out the lights. You know what? Whereas, we could strip it of it, but then we're like, I think it's denying the world, denying a bit of reality in a movie that is so naturalistic. To take that part out, and it wasn't like it was gratuitous or it was graphic, but it wasn't a gore, a slasher film. Jesus, yes, a North American film wouldn't have had that, but oh my God, you can rape all kinds of people and
totally,
and gut them. They make big bank. I'm 100% fundamentally fine with these folks doing what actually happens in the world. And you know they're going to eat the whole goddamn thing.
Yeah, I was thinking that I was basically going to lead to that conclusion as well. We recently watched John Wick, and oh my God, he's just like, it's like, we watched the first and the second one. I'm like, this is like an hour of him just like rampaging through his way out of a situation, like by killing so many people. So I was totally fine with, you know, the hunting scenes in this movie, and I think this made me think of something. And I always this thought I have is I'm always reaffirmed of it, or this belief. I'm always reaffirmed of it when I watch the Cannes Film Festival. It's that, you know, when you watch the commercials, it's like the stuff that the European commercials. The stuff that they show you could never get away with in North America because there's like a woman topless. And I find it like, it's just something there. I think this is just a general conclusion I've made, but I think in that part of the world in Europe, you know, nudity is not really as big of a deal as it is here. Whereas I think violence in like the gore sense and just like plowing your way through, there is definitely violence in French films for sure, but just like that mad rampage, like John Wick style, is not is widely common. So I think there's just that flip of you know, what can pass in mainstream film and what can't. So and commercials for that matter, apparently. So
I suspect that's what led to a lot of the comments about it being sort of like a documentary. Was the sort of
you're
show
right.
it at length, especially the butchering of the last seal there.
It is unfortunate, though, that some folks, if they just kind of wrote it off that quickly, there's a part of me, and especially on these cool comedy, that low arc, where if you're not paying attention, I could see if you're only watching it with one eye, you know, that all of a sudden that it is a movie, it is a narrative, would kind of slip by you. But I got to admit, like, I mean, even though it's using maybe some documentary techniques, it's not.
It didn't take away from it, I don't think.
No. Well, no, it was appropriate to the story they were telling, but it that doesn't mean it made for a documentary. It's a documentary if you're watching it lazily.
I think I would have questioned it if they didn't show hunting the way they did. They even showed the guys trying it themselves.
Do anything up north without somebody with a rifle?
Yeah, definitely. So it would be like, I don't know. I'd I can't think of a comparison right on the spot, but I could probably think of one where it'd be like, another movie not showing something or whatever. It'd be like story lacking.
Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of got on a tangent there. If it's cool with you guys, I'm going to bring us back to the performance just so we can once again touch on the community.
Okay.
And everyone within the community. Like, I mean, and it's what was there any? I thought they all felt real.
Yes. Yeah.
But was there anyone, start with you, Katie, if it's cool, is there anyone particularly standout or a couple of standouts as far as the Inuit community, in their performances or?
Yeah, I think.
And that goes for folks in the chat.
Yeah. Bravo to all of them, because they're not, I gather they weren't any of them were professional actors, and I think they all performed really well. And so, yeah, all of them, I commend them tremendously. I guess if I were to choose choose particular performances, I would have to say, fortunately, I don't remember the names of them in the movie, but there was the one man who was just sitting there when the two Thomases...
Mitterick the hunter, right?
The hunter.
You're talking about the hunter, yeah.
The hunter, yeah.
Say again,
so that
Jim?
was
Martika, thank you.
Yeah, so when he was just, sitting there, and you could just feel the tension in the room, and the two Thomases have just like no clue what this guy's doing there. And so for him to really not do anything and just, but to bring that tension is like remarkable, I thought. And part of it might be because it's a cultural thing, so I can't relate. Like, if that happened to, it happened to them, and if it happened to me, then I would feel the same way. But it's obviously, it just acknowledges the cultural difference that I have in perceiving that. So
and there's also acting is reacting, and the two Thomases gave a great.
And that too, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Jim,
then,
go ahead, Katie.
Oh, and I was going to say the only other one, like I said, they all did well, but the other one I would want to comment on is the woman's performance. She's just young.
The young woman,
yeah. So she, I like how she performed in the movie, how she responded to the advances, and just,
a normal young woman who's not interested.
Yeah, but I mean,
she delivered that like a normal young woman, not interested.
But sometimes
women,
I know
you're looking at me, but I'm not going to give you too much.
Some women, some men can't take rejection, so women try and weasel their way out of it somehow by lying, and but she didn't have to, and that was refreshing. So
yeah, well, I would also say though, she did what like a lot of women do. It's like, okay, I know you're looking at me, but I'm not going to give you any reason to believe I reciprocate this, like without being a jerk. Like, I mean, back to that tension that a woman's got to ride. She is doing that, but they're also not amping that up. Like, and this will be another great conflict.
Yes.
Jim, what about you? Who are your top few performances as far as the community goes? Which is terrible. We've given the two white men and then the third white man the bulk of the attention, and then
everyone else,
the community. Yes, miscellaneous.
Well, I mean, they did.
But I mean, it's the way the narrative's written. We're not. I don't think we had stars, and we had also starring.
Yeah.
In terms of how much of the the screenplay that they had to how many lines they had, etc. Ole and Adam were the two guys there, the two friends, I guess. They were good. The Miss Greenland, as I've been referring to her as Kullorsuaq, was horribly mispronouncing that, I'm sure. And that's played by Benedicte Eliasson. I thought
Those
she
good Danish girl's name.
nice. I thought she was a good presence. Like she was sort of very confident. Actually, when her of course, at the end when you have they sort of introduce this new character who's just come in from the hunt. It happens to be her boyfriend, which is the way that taller Thomas finds out she's not available. He kind of sulks away and
like a guy who's put his heart out there.
Yeah.
And then this is not reciprocated.
I thought I had recognized the kid before, the boyfriend, but he only has one credit, so probably not. But I mean, they gave the people a lot to do, which is always nice. And the older man that was showing,
they felt real.
Yeah, the older man that was showing the pictures had a nice presence too. I quite like that as he's going through every picture. But like, how do we get out of this? But
I think somebody said that in the chat. It was like the whole thrust of, oh, for the love of God, this is never going to end.
At the same time, what else are you going to do here? So but anyway, I would it be nice to watch something that's solely about a Greenlandic community? Sure, I'd watch it. I mean, Atanarjuat, that's what that is big.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well then, you know what? Let's maybe what we'll do is quickly catch up on the chat, and then maybe we can, we still have the director to just briefly mention. Although I think in some ways, it's all been just one long kind of slow burn praise of the director's work. Because he wrote it and directed, he pulled it together. Although based on Vlad's research, I suspect a lot of workshopping and collaborating with the two leads, those two actors, which is such a great actor-director thing to do when you're, maybe you're not the... Yeah, it rings like, hey, we should make our own movie because no one's hiring us to do stuff. I might never get hired. I still couldn't get that fucking car to run, like they feel real. But and then we'll kind of talk about final thoughts, wrap up. We still got to talk about our next show, which is another one with a special guest. So nobody bugger off just yet. Okay, where were we? All right, I was so the Upside Den chimed in earlier. He actually had this movie on while working on editing his review, so wasn't really paying much attention. Plus, it's in French, so it's not like I could listen and get the gist of it. Locations, get a thumbs up from the Upside Den. Dan, we appreciate your attendance and your honesty. And yes, it did look beautiful, didn't it? Okay, all right. The Upside Down, though, is a big fan of Harry Potter and would have been really into taking a picture at platform 9 3/4. It is at the Charing Cross station, Dan. It is not actually like the thing she describes doesn't actually exist. So they, like a good tourist country, Katie, you could speak to this. They literally custom built it to accommodate tourists who are coming there anyway. Yeah. So they built an arch, like it really is kind of a bizarre off to the side thing. Yeah, no, really, like there's a cart halfway into a wall. Like it's there.
Too funny.
Like so people they go to Charing Cross, and of course you got to buy a ticket because you're on the right side. You're on the wrong side of the turnstile, right?
Oh yeah.
So I suspect the London Metro, the Tube, is making a little dough. All right. Yeah. Okay, that's Jelly. Okay. Oh, Jelly Duck. Boy, everyone's going back and forth. Love the side adventures, guys. Okay, and then, all right. Ahmed asked, do they actually cook jellyfish? That's Jelly Duck's stupid question, LOL. Ahmed, I don't think it is a stupid question. I believe they steam jellyfish, if memory serves. Does that ring true to you guys? Like, I mean, Jim, you were in a big seafood country for years. You were in Japan for 3 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. Yeah, I think they would steam it probably. I can't imagine, say, deep frying it. You know,
Yeah, I know.
or throwing it on the grill. But yeah, I don't think that would work. I actually haven't had it, so I've eaten a lot of other seafood, but not that.
Yeah. Katie, you know,
No, actually,
sounds like a research irregular job, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think they steam it, Ahmed, and I don't know because I didn't, when the opportunity was given to me, I didn't try it, and I kicked myself. It may be literally if I ever go back to China, maybe the first thing, like especially Shanghai is on, for all intents and purposes, on the coast. Yes, it is on the, it's part of the Yangtze River system, the Poo, which is both sides of the river. It's the Puxi and Pudong. The new side, which looks all sci-fi, blah, 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 blah. There's way more information than you'd ever want about Shanghai, but it's a lot of seafood, and I didn't eat that. Who knows though? Maybe it was a deep fried jellyfish that the Chinese guy street food vendor was offering me. Maybe I did have it and I just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Vlad 65. Back to Jim's road pictures. Tall guy is Bing Crosby, more assertive than short guy, which is Bob Hope. You know, I'm buying that. Like, I mean, there's a bit of that vibe. Yeah, Bob Hope was always more the twitchy, nervous one in those shows, wasn't he?
Too
funny. Jelly Duck, but they're Thomas brothers. Dragon movie guy. Loved The Big Bang Theory. Sheldon once moved to Butte, Montana, which is almost Canada. I'm not sure I'm going to buy that, but
proximity, I think he was.
No, I figured as much. But there's proximity, and then there's, let's say, the metaphorical proximity.
Yes.
Butte, Montana, in some ways, it's
very distant.
Very far. Although, mind you, no, southern Alberta, in a way, culturally and politically, probably a lot more overlap.
Totally.
You know,
I think
and
so.
a ton of Mormons. So a lot of Utah there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Vlad 65 on the characters. Nathan says, your mom always attracted strange men. This is what you were laughing about earlier, Jim. Yes. Yeah. Does that include Nathan too? Yeah, and I really did feel Vlad, that's exactly what he was, just kind of, okay, my son doesn't get it because he's wound too tight. The tall Thomas would have got that joke.
Yeah.
Okay, Vlad 65 on hunting. The film's choices are very honest, and the hunting in this movie is honest for the place. Is that something? I think I certainly agree, and I think Katie does. Jim, would you buy that? Like, I mean,
it's not like it was a set piece that seemed, totally out of character or anything like that. I think it was, a genuine, something they would do. Hey, let's see if these guys can hunt. I think it would be a challenge almost to them, from the villagers.
Yeah. Katie Shashank loved John Wick 2, or loved John Wick. I love John Wick.
I mean, I didn't. Yeah. We won't go on that sidebar too far, but I enjoyed the movie. We've only seen the first and second one, but it was just a notable observation. I was like, wow, it's just like by the second movie, it's just he's spending a lot of minutes just getting out of, like, exiting his contract or whatever, and
if we ever do those movies, I think I'd be with you on that, Katie. Like, the first one is actually really kind of a unique and special film. The other ones, it's like, oh, geez, why don't it just,
Well, we watched them back to back too.
It's dragging on. Oh, good Lord.
We watched them back to back, so then you're adding on from the first one, right? So it's just like...
Which is an interesting experiment, though, at the same time.
Yes.
Because they are set, like, and in minutes later. So, Okay, Ahmed, he's leaving us. Hope we didn't miss you. Ahmed, if we miss saying goodbye, sorry about that, brother. Ahmed, JellyDuck100 says, I'm better, go, just composing music, stuff. You guys are amazing. Thank you very much, Ahmed. Take care, everyone. Greetings from Kuwait. Winky. She's even got a little winky there. Ahmed, ciao for now, my friend. We're all waving goodbye. All right. Okay. Back to food, which was kind of a part of this film.
Yes.
Dragon Movie Guy says, have you ever tried geoduck seafood? Wicked weird tasting from the PNW. Pronounced gooey duck. I have not. PNW, I'm not even sure.
Pacific Northwest, I think, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, haven't. Now I want to look that up. I can say I haven't. You guys?
No.
Yeah.
You won't get much. You won't get much seafood trying out of me. So.
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
no. We live on the prairies. We don't.
There's
get
a
fresh
reason
seafood.
why, Jim. There's a reason why neither Katie or I have developed a taste for jellyfish.
Yeah, I mean, some people just say no to any seafood, but
I pretty much do.
You're missing one of the world's many palettes of
I know. It's a texture thing for me.
flavor.
Well, you know what? If you end up in Greenland, Katie, especially that
I'm gonna
far north,
struggle. Yeah.
guess what?
Well, you never
It's
actually
that
No
That's a
eyeballs
raw
for me. Yeah.
liver of seal.
you never. I don't think you ever maybe see the shorter Thomas eat anything. I'm just trying to think, but maybe there's one meal that they had with the father. They show him drinking.
Yeah, because he
wine.
kept staying away from it. Yeah.
But it's the tall one that tries the seal liver, the tall one that
Yeah.
tries the eye.
The eye, yeah. Richard L. Oh, more research. Jellyfish often shredded and eaten raw in salads. Richard L. I have had it this way once, but also can be lightly sautéed. There we go. Not just steamed or not steamed at all. Thank you very much, Richard L. Again, showing once again why he's 50% of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars. Wait a sec. There's more. Richard L. If cooked, just lightly scalded for a few seconds and then done. Which would make sense. It is jellyfish. Okay, Vlad to Jim. Getting late, need to jump ship. See you in the emails. I love that. Vlad, thank you very much again for dropping in and being such an active part of the chat. Thank you very much for your support. Yeah. All right. Okay. Richard L. Gooey duck, and I'm mispronouncing that. I hope to see it in your next review, Dragon Movie Guy, is a large clam. And he says he has never tried it. Okay. All right. So I think, what do we got? We really got the directors. We got to talk about our next show, the director. We got to talk about our next show, some final thoughts. And we're getting close to wrapping up, but we haven't talked about the director. I'm not sure we have much left to say about it because I think in a way we've talked about the director's work so much. Mm-hmm. But Jim, why don't you start us off about the director?
Well, I was actually looking at his IMDb page, and he has got a short film from about 2 years before called Inuit Woman. And it's a 34-minute short about Thomas and Thomas, and I think that's what,
right. Okay.
So it's almost like a dry run for this movie.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And maybe that footage of them in Paris came from that. But yeah, so there's a short that is similar to this one here. So, and I think it involves the Ole and Adam coming to Paris.
Gotcha.
But it'd be sort of interested to see that. Yeah. Oh, he's very committed to the subject. Obviously, I can't imagine it would be easy to go from Paris to Greenland to film and all the logistics and things like that. So good on him. Nice sort of a very subtle story, which he's written as well. Not too heavy-handed. Like I say, maybe it's not a movie for everyone because it's so subtle, but I thought it was pretty tight.
I like the way you put that, Jim, about that being like it's not heavy-handed. It's not look at me directing, you know, which I think if I have a beef with like David Fincher films, yeah, they're amazing and everything, but they're so obviously directed, you know, whereas this, I like this sort of almost old-fashioned American style direction, not drawing attention to itself. The editing isn't drawing attention to itself. What did you think? What did you think of Sebastian's mise en scene?
Yeah, I would agree with Jim, and I think that I'm sure. I mean, I'm taking a guess here, but I think that with some of those scenes, they were, like back to the local showing his photo album. I don't think that was really. I don't know how much rehearsal went into that. It was just really just something that might have happened a bit more organically, and that was, it was neat to see. So yeah, it wasn't, I guess, scripted like a normal, like a mainstream Hollywood movie would be. So there was, some organic components to it, which was refreshing, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you know what, for my 2 cents, guys, I think the director did a great job. It does look like there's a lot of collaboration with the 2 lead actors, which is great because I do think they are part of the storytelling. They are part of the storytelling. They're not like some directors think of actors as talking props. I know one because he literally said that. No, see, this is a prop. Oh, sorry, let me bring it in. This is a prop. Actor over there, prop that talks. And if I could get this thing to talk, I'd be happy with that. And gentle and really almost taking all those constraints, and the environment, as beautiful is a huge constraint. Getting crew out there, which means you have a very small crew, is a constraint. You know, they're shooting, they're not building any sets, or maybe they did back in Paris. Maybe the room was a built set or something, but I suspect not. You know, but to take all those constraints and turn it into an advantage, you know, not a lot of, we don't have this, and where's the jib arm, and where's my crane shot, you know, like Johnny LaRue in Polynesian Town. You know, they don't have that, and that he was able to take that, work with everyone, work with these Greenlandic actors and everything to pull what he needed out of everyone to knit this together. Yeah. Great bit of direction. I would be interested in seeing not just the short, but to see a movie like his next flick.
Yeah. Other things they've done too. It sort of reminds me, looking at their various IMDb pages, you know, how much deeper the French film scene is than, you know, again, I think you and I have spoken, when we get something on PBS, we get the best stuff, but there's all kinds of other production going on that we're not aware of necessarily.
Yeah. Here's something. Okay, you know what? They're never mind. They're both they're talking about it. So here was the question. First, Dragon Movie Guy, didn't Ben Stiller shoot Walter Mitty in Greenland? I always thought that it was both in Greenland and Iceland. And then Richard commented directly, apparently Walter Mitty, Greenland scenes were actually shot in, and I'll ask you to pronounce that, Katie.
Stikkisholmer.
Stikkisholmer in Iceland, where Katie and Richard L. have visited themselves, which is pretty effing cool. Did you also ride on down a crazy hill on a skateboard? No.
No,
Well,
we
then,
drove.
What was
we drove
the
on that
point
road.
of going? Why'd you even bother going? Okay. All right, guys. Listen. Before we get into final thoughts, I think it is now time. It is time to talk about the next film we're going to be taking a look at. Jim, let's put the focus on you. And why don't you first, and then I'll talk about the special guest we'll have. But why don't you first talk about the next film we're going to be looking at for next week?
We're going to be watching our first documentary, Making Waves: The Art of Cinematic Sound.
No, that's correct. And for those of you, it really comes out of my nerdy commitment. I'm forever trying to get the sound right. The audience is listening. You know what, Jim? You may still remember when the really, really nice theaters had that. You were in the THX theater, and the branding would be "the audience is listening," which is it's a George Lucas thing. But we're fortunate enough, guys, we're going to have a special guest, and let me just load up his picture here. Fortunate enough, I had actually interviewed this guy a few months ago for the show as kind of a special episode in an episode. I might have kind of effed up the interview, everybody, technically speaking. And it was like, it really bothered me because I really find what this guy does is fascinating. And he's the one who actually recommended this film to everybody, and that's this dude, Curtis Judd from and he's a big audio he's an audio, like a sound recorder, a sound recordist, like a set sound recordist, and a boom operator and a videographer, freelance and corporate work in Utah. And he's also he also runs a couple of much larger channels than ours, including focusing on light and sound for video, and another one's just about sound recording. And he was kind enough to accept my invitation to be guest host for this Making of Cinematic Sound. And I think that'll, you know what, much like what was born out of this experience with Katie, where she's got a special knowledge. It's like having a subject matter expert, you know what, to kind of give us a different flavor on what these films can be, another way to look at it. And it's the same thing for this, and so I'm really looking forward to that. And I hope you all, and I guess guys, I hope you all have, where are we here? Bear with me. Hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. And what do we need to do? Ringy-ding that bell. Jazz hands.
Jazz hands. That's the best I can do.
Awesome. No, thank you very much. That's wonderful. Okay, so let's quickly. Let's quickly, you know what? We're going to take care of some of these last comments. Then we're going to go into final thoughts. All right. First, Dragon Movie Guy says, Iceland sounds like a fun place to visit too. Katie?
Absolutely. 100%. Hands down. It's amazing.
And the only thing that kind of, I don't know, does it bother me? Am I a bad man? I am actually half ethnically Icelandic, or not ethnic. You know, my dad's mom. Ancestral. Thank you. My dad's mom grew up is a Canadian, a Western Icelander, as they call it, and with a name like Christensen with 2 S's and all that other BS. You know, you kind of wonder why. Why have I not?
You were the son of Christian at some point, I guess.
Exactly. Why have I not gone What's with that?
Yeah.
Especially because usually Icelandair has a kind of a sweetheart deal as long as you're willing to stay in Reykjavik for a few days.
Yeah.
Why haven't I done that?
Yeah.
I'm a terrible human being. And then back to Dragon Movie Guy. THX 1138 was the reference, sir. There's my George Lucas nerdiness coming out. Dragon Movie Guy coming out. THX 1187 exclamation mark. And I believe it's THX 1138. We will continue to nerd out in the comments after the show, I suspect.
George
All
Lucas,
right.
who happens to be in Making Waves. So.
Yes, because it's the audience is listening. Wah. Okay, Shashank, you know what? Yeah, we did get Curtis Judd, and I'm quite excited. You know what? It's you know what? Katie, we've been really lucky with some great guests who've really helped bring out more out of the film, and so yeah, and only more to come, guys. All right, because you guys are the best chat on the internet. All right, okay, so let's go to guys. Yeah, why don't we actually before we get into final thoughts, one more thing, Katie, why don't you tell us? As we're getting near to wrap up, first of all, where can people, if they want to follow you and what you're doing on the internet, like follow more in that travel vein and that tourism vein, because I know you've got some stuff that'll be coming out soon in that vein. Where could they find you? Where should they go?
Well, for my most recent content. You can follow me on Twitter at Katie Ann Fowler, and that's actually the same as my Instagram. Although my Instagram account right now is mostly it's obviously still active, but it's mostly just me posting my previous trips, my previous travel trips, because we're not traveling right now. So, but it's still active in that way that it can inspire to visit some neat places, and I do have Icelandic pictures. Dragon Movie Guy on there. So if you're interested in checking some of those photos out, there's some really good ones on there. So
fantastic. Katie, can you give us a taste of the project you're working on and an idea of when, we'll start to see that, really start to blossom? Like, I know it's still kind of in a seed format.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. I'm starting a project. It was inspired by a few different reasons, but mainly it's obviously mostly inspired by the pandemic, and it's at the moment it focuses more on where I live and where Rob and Jim live in Manitoba, and just helping people try and find things to do and in the world we're living in where we can't do much. So it's going to be more less about me and more about everyone else's input and what bring all our ideas together and how we can just help each other march on, I guess. So
yeah.
Does that make sense?
that makes sense. And it will, as we will be in a post-COVID world. In some ways sooner than we think. Like, I mean, as much as we feel like it's kind of like we're actually on the second half of winter, even though it feels so dark and but so warm. Long, right? But we are in the second half of winter. It is getting brighter every day. Mm-hmm. Not that we can tell, but it is. Yeah. How do you see your project developing when we do get back to being able to travel? And how do you see yourself able to grow outside of the perimeter bubble, as we say in Winnipeg, because there's a perimeter road that everyone outside the perimeter accuses Winnipeggers of going, oh, well, it's outside the perimeter, you're not thinking of us.
Yeah.
For those of you who are from outside of Winnipeg, and it sounds like I'm being, I'm making fun of you. I guess I kind of am. Sorry, Katie. Back to you.
Oh, I think a lot of it will be based on the direction that people want to go, based on everyone else's input on the project. So
Okay.
but I mean, more so just trying to find, there's a lot of hidden gems in Manitoba, and I think we hear a lot about the same usual things. We all know about the forks, we all know about the museums, and we all know about you know Rocky Mountain and that kind of thing. But there's just some other cool, maybe might be more of a focus on rural tourism, I suppose. Just kind of especially now, because we don't have very many places to go. Why not explore what's not too far from you and what's relatively safe at this point? So.
Okay, well, you know what? As things develop, as we move into that post-COVID world, I hope you will come back with another flick and come join us again.
Oh, for sure, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not rushing you out. We got more to go, but
Yeah.
I did want to make sure that you understood. This has been, I don't know, Jim, am I overstepping? Or are you there whispering, never again? It was terrible. What?
A good girl? No, He's gonna do that at the start, sort of a Shaggy on Scooby-Doo call out.
Yeah.
But,
That's great. Okay. All right. So I think that's. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Katie, for giving us that, and we'll definitely have you back. But now it's time for final thoughts on this film. Basically, here's your 1 minute, 2 minutes tops to anything that you thought was kind of missed. Time to blah it out. Jim, you go first. Next time I'll actually have like a ticker.
Okay, two things. There was the taller Thomas says at one point, it was almost like a Smith's shout out. It said, "Pretty girls who've suffered upset me the most," referring to Miss Greenland. He goes, "I need to learn Inuit and fast." Those are two good lines. Bam, bam.
And the rest of the film, what is he? He's got the book he's reading. He's got his nose in that French Greenlandic.
Yeah.
The
The other thing too is in the doctor's office, there were eye charts. You really have to sort of look to see them, know where you're looking. But there were three. They were sort of all on the same sort of hanging off the same knob in the doctor's office, and two of them had Roman style letters, and the one tucked in behind just had animals. And I thought that was awesome. I would have liked to. That's obviously for people who can't read, who still need an eye chart. I thought that was really cool. Anyway,
or it could even just, maybe it's not that they're not reading Roman letters.
Yeah.
Or Latin letters. They're reading. I know what that is. That's a moose or whatever the.
Yeah. And I thought that was really two little tiny things. Well, the line was more important, but that little, just the detail. That's sort of, again, the kind of reason why you watch
Great
movies.
production design. Yeah.
So.
Okay, Katie. Go. Any final thoughts? Any little tidbits we missed that you really think? No, we need to talk about this briefly.
One thing I can't believe I haven't brought up yet is the baby test, and
You mean the baby seal? Blam!
Yeah.
And then like a pair of scissors on a burrito.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
But for whatever reason, I had no problem with that versus, babies being kidnapped or having guns pointed at their heads. So for me, it did pass the baby test. So.
Oh yeah. And you know what? Kind of that baby test thing, Katie. There's there's different kinds of violence. Let's say.
Yeah.
This definitely passed that kind of violence test.
Yes.
With you.
Yes.
Anything else that you wanted to touch on briefly? If just.
I just going back to my guest Shashank wanting to visit, mentioning he wants to visit Greenland. I'm very much on the same page. I can't remember what was the turning point for me, but I guess one kind of silly part is I've been to Iceland and I've been to Newfoundland, where they have either replica Viking settlements or remnants of Viking settlements. And so the third on that list would be Greenland. So if I get there, then I will have been to all three. So maybe in some silly way, I'm just trying to check off those boxes. But like I said, I'm always, my research, my background is in Arctic tourism. So it's something that
Right
I
up
hold
your
very
alley.
dear. And like, kayaking with belugas in Churchill, or being within almost, touching distance of penguins in Patagonia in South America are like some of the most memorable experiences of my life. So, but yeah, I think, so Greenland's definitely on my list as well. And this movie just reinforced, my desire to want to go there. So,
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go, Shashank. You got another, you know what, maybe
travel companion.
Richard, Katie,
We'll
Katie,
meet you in
and
the
you,
middle.
you can all, you know what, maybe coordinate some sort of, self-guided tour when you're all there. Okay, I just want to quickly shout out the if you've gone already, I'm glad you made it anyway. Upside Down, good night, everyone. It was nice having Katie with you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, it was the Upside Down.
Definitely.
Dragon Movie Guy. Also, gotta bug out, fellas. Until next time, love the show. Thank you very much, Dragon Movie Guy. And thank you for coming. You know what? You're part of what makes the show great. For me, I want to come back to, and there's Shashank being a good member of the best chat on the internet. Should have like a little TM for that. For me, guys, I think like the two things I wanted to bring up, and just nice little, I found it hilarious that there was not more than one and different like versions of Paris International Golf Club, like, which looks like just something that comes out of some fast fashion mall BS. That some of the locals were wearing, some of the villagers were wearing. And one was on a ball cap, the other was on kind of a, one of those felt micro fleece beanie sort of deal. And I'm like, Paris International Golf Club, what low rent? And then I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of what ends up that far, on the edge, right? The other thing I thought was was kind of hilarious, and I thought was kind of noteworthy was the and this goes back to I can't help but drop my travel stuff. When I was in Shanghai, I stayed with a guy who was living there as like he was living and working in Shanghai for the American company he worked for, but and he had been there a couple of years already, and he had another year he was going to be there. Jim, you may remember Chris Boucher. Does this name ring a bell? It was his older brother who was in Shanghai, so I stayed with him. And of course, he hung out with the expat community, and but he was the first person who brought it up. I guess he was reading some local rag, meant for the expat community, talking about it's interesting when white people go live somewhere else. Everyone, including the locals, refer to them as expats, never immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally true, though.
Right?
Yeah, I never.
And there it
that,
was
but...
in this movie. They refer to the dad. He's not an immigrant. He didn't go emigrate to Greenland. He's an expat.
Yeah. And they actually say expat in French. They say
yes.
expat.
Yeah, it's like a global. So anyway, I was like, hey, there it is. It's not just North American thing, apparently. So a shout out to Dave Boucher, who was an awesome host, in case he watches this and gets to the end. And thanks for being such a wonderful host. What did you call it, Katie? This kind of travel, which was half my trip in China.
What?
When you're visiting someone.
Oh, visiting friends and relatives of VFR.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The VFR portion was absolutely wonderful, including the fact that my first night in Shanghai was in a Shanghai brew pub pizza joint, and my last night in Shanghai was getting Portuguese chicken. Because that's Shanghai.
Yeah.
Just crazy. Okay. So guys, I think we've got kind of our final thoughts. What I'm going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys to the green room shortly. Let's just quick catch up. Oh, look at this, Richard L. Shashank. We hope to visit Pond Inlet and Pangnertung on Baffin Island, to hike and kayak and see narwhal within the next 2
That's
years.
definitely happening.
So there you go. And of course Shashank is like awesome. Well, Shashank, you got a challenge there. Okay. So guys, I'm going to send you to the green room. Just kind of hang out. I'm gonna wrap this up. Folks, stick around because I got a bit more information for you. But you guys can hang out for a bit, hey?
Yes.
Okay. Stand. All right, Jim. See you shortly. Katie, again, thanks very much for coming by. Oh wait, I think she was actually trying to wave to everyone before I blew her off. Okay. All right. Back to the green room, or perhaps if you wanted to go to your restroom while I wrap up here.
Sure.
I would understand. All right, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much. First and foremost, thank you so much for coming. And this is Richard L. Thank you. Shashank, thank you. Dragon Movie Guy, The Upside Dan. We've got, oh, good Lord. I'm Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100, all the way from Kuwait City. You know what? We had a brief new The Upside Dan. Thank you very much. You guys do make it the best chat. This is the best chat on the internet. Vlad65, thanks again. Thanks again for making it. And I want to catch, there was one more. We had a new person to join us, and I want to make sure that I'm given that. Blake, there we are. Blake Decoding popped in from Twitch. Thank you very much, Blake. Hope to see you next week. Again, thank you. All right, everybody. As Katie and Richard, or as Jim was saying, next week, again, it's called Waves, or Making Waves, the Art of Cinematic Sound. And you can, here in Canada, I found it on Google Play. I believe it's also in a couple of the borrowing, like Hoopla or Canopy, one of those two. But I did find it on Google Play Movies. I'm sure you'll find it. Oh, in the United States, I know it's on Amazon Prime Movies. It's just to watch on Prime. So that's an option. Check it out. And then next week, it's next Sunday. So you want to come back to next Sunday on 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Universal Coordinated Time -6. That's the offset. And what else? You know what? I think it's time to cue the credits.
I've been